Alright, hello, it's a Sinister Gambino here with a news video. In this video, I'm going to be going over the Red Dead Redemption coming to Netflix, iOS, Android, PS5, Xbox Series, and Switch 2, Nintendo Switch 2, whatever. But yeah, first of all, to address like elephant in the room basically. Grand Theft Auto 6 VI is now set to launch November 19th, 2026. Yeah, I decided I wasn't going to make like a whole dedicated video on this thing. Like, what at most, it's probably like a couple topics at most. That would even be new there with, I'll see the new date. Like, yeah, 13-year anniversary. I did hear about the Unibusting thing, but I'm not really a people person or anything. I don't have like one dedicated side on that thing. Feel in some cases the business is in the right side on that. Other ways it's the employees and stuff. I don't really care that much on that. But yes, I will go on to the main story here for Red Dead Redemption coming to Netflix. That was Android, PS5, Xbox Series, and Switch 2, Nintendo Switch 2, whatever. So I think the top trailer is kind of just the usual trailer they've kind of had on like the usual Red Dead Redemption Rockstar news wires lately. And Red Dead Redemption coming to Netflix, iOS, Android, PS5, Xbox Series, and Nintendo Switch 2 is the proper title. Okay, it's kind of what I figured. Available December 2nd, December 2, December 2nd. Dated November 13th, 2025. So, yeah, basically, Netflix Games is what the main company is, kind of involved with the mobile ports, as far as I understand, lately with the Trilogy, quote-unquote, Definitive Edition, albeit the mobile versions, ironically, were pretty much the best ones, like, out the box, at least with the initial launch anyways. So once again, it seems they are partnering with Netflix basically for the new versions for Red Dead Redemption on mobile. For of course, obviously iOS and Android. So if you have the like gaming subscription for Netflix, I believe you can basically just get them with that. And I believe Grand Theft Auto, like Free Vice City and San Andreas are available for individual purchase, so that should be an option. It sounds like as well for this. If not initially, then eventually. And then I'll get to at least one other way you can get the game as well if you don't want to do it for the Netflix subscription in particular, for the gaming side of it anyways. And yeah, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, proper actual 9th gen versions of the game. Fucking finally, holy fucking hell, man. That's what I was asking for since the initial launch of the newer versions like 2 fucking years ago, over 2 years ago at this fucking point. Like, Christ, bro. Why the hell did they start on PlayStation 4 and the Switch 1? Switch 1 I could get, obviously, because Switch 2 wasn't out until this year, obviously, but why the hell was it on PlayStation 4 and not 5 in the get-go? I wonder. Or like, at least do both versions at the same time. I don't know, like, why the 9th gen version would have had to wait, quite frankly. And for the Xbox side of things, they actually didn't get the new version at all. They still had the backwards compatible version of the original like Xbox 360 version. Which honestly, in my opinion, is kind of a better way to play it since you actually have the multiplayer. This new version, obviously, even on Xbox, it's not surely going to have the multiplayer. If you still want the multiplayer, you could probably still obviously play it a backwards compatible version. Of course, it's not like they're probably going to be removing the backwards compatible version, I would have to imagine. So you should always be able to get access to that, and even if they did, you might be able to still get like a 360 like discs. Yeah, you could probably still get like an Xbox 360 disc and still play multiplayer and like have the original like backwards compatible experience that way. And then yeah, Switch 2, Switch 1 obviously should be able to have some kind of upgrade for Switch 2. I think usually for the third-party companies, it usually tends to be a free upgrade. Not sure what like first parties like Sony and Nintendo and stuff get to charge like $10 for theirs for the most part, unless that's like new contents. And in that kind of case, I could kind of get it. But yeah, some of them upgrades be overpriced in the first party side of things when it comes to console manufacturers, I feel. But again, this was dated November 13th, 2025. And then, yeah, on December 2nd, that would be the release date for the new versions of the game. Basically, and yeah, it does, by the way, also include Undead Nightmare. I think it's pretty much just been saying Red Dead Redemption before, but just like the other recent versions, it does, in fact, include Undead Nightmare. But yeah, cool. It's going to be as portable as ever with the iOS and Android versions. Obviously, like phones pretty much can be much smaller than even the Switch 1 and the Switch 2, so nice to see even better portability than it's ever had before, arguably. I swear this game has been so much more accessible lately. It's been very amazing for sure. Now, if only they'd do the same thing for Grand Theft Auto 4 episodes of Liberty City, that would be amazing. And then, yeah. Free upgrades. Alright, that is confirmed. Okay, cool. Cool. Ability to carry over game progress. So I assume, obviously, at least console specific for like PS4 to 5 should be possible. Maybe the backwards compatible version they could somehow do this series. I'm not sure how that would work since they're quite different builds of the game. I would have to imagine in the slightest, at least. Since again, they didn't actually get the new version at all on Xbox beforehand. Since they didn't really need it, obviously, compared to the other platforms beforehand, at least. And then, yeah, Switch to Switch 2, obviously, yeah, will apparently be having a free upgrade as well. Or, I mean, not free upgrade, obviously, but yeah, carrying over the game progress. You should be able to do it between the two Switches, of course, as well. Number of enhancements. I'm kind of doubting it will be, obviously, from like PS5 to Xbox or like Xbox. Or like Switch to PlayStation or something. I'm doubting that will happen though. Unless they do it server side or something for like the social club somehow, maybe then that could happen, but yeah. Alright, but yeah, they mentioned Red Dead Redemption 2 and stuff. A game that still does not have 60 frames per second, is locked to like the 30 frames per second, doesn't have like the enhancements this game is apparently getting. Funnily enough, this one was the rumored one to be getting it this year, but it sounds like it's actually not going to happen at all this year. Maybe next year they push it in though, since they did delay the next game, Grand Theft Auto 6, VI obviously, for the upcoming project. So they do have a lot of room there, obviously. And then, yeah, it's pretty much feature complete aside from multiplayer, obviously for the single player, including the bonus content, year edition, all that kind of stuff as well. Again, kind of usual in the last couple of years for the re-releases. Ever since the original PlayStation 4 Nintendo Switch re-release. Coming Netflix and mobile. Again, more than ever before, I really enjoy how much more accessible this game has been from being console locked on the 7th generation platforms of the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360. Now it's been opened up to pretty much everything at this point once this version comes out. Not just consoles and even mobile, like phones and shit. You're gonna be able to bring that shit everywhere now, basically. Now, if only they'd actually put all this love and attention and detail into Grand Theft Auto 4, that'd be great. Or whatever. And episodes. With double 11 or whatever, that would be great. Obviously, you just don't do it with like Grove Street Games, formerly Wardrum Studios, aka like Wardrum Studios, Grove Shit Games, all that kind of shit. Moving Confederate flags and shit for the US flag and like Vice City Definitive Edition, all that bullshit. Don't do it with them, I'd say though. If y'all do though. I think they learned though, with that whole disaster finally though, with how bad the trilogy ended up going and like how much work they had to put into that and shit. Yeah. Alright, but yeah, it includes mobile-friendly control options. I'm not going to show those at all in this, by the way, for the video thing I'm doing here. If you go on like your app store or whatever, you can see screenshots of it coming out. It's from Netflix Inc. I checked Rockstar's thing. I don't think they had it listed, at least on iOS. I assume eventually there will be actual listing in the Rockstar Games like developer section though, where you can actually buy the game and it's not just purely tied to the membership subscription for Netflix. I think the current listing I saw said you need a membership for that, but it sounds like there is other ways to get it as well. So I have to imagine that will be being put up at some other point, maybe if it's not already up even. Last I checked, there was only the Netflix listing I could find at least. But it's cool, they have like certain graphics for like the jumping, like the weapon wheel, all that stuff that makes a lot of like sense with the game, with the like revolver, like cylinder icon for the weapon wheel and stuff. It's pretty cool for the buttons they use. If for some reason you don't have like a controller, Bluetooth controller plugged in or something. But obviously, and probably if you want to play the phone versions, I'd highly probably recommend using a Bluetooth controller for the best experience possible on those. So obviously you can connect like dual senses, pretty much any of the current console controllers to those, from my understanding. And then yeah, I did mention the Netflix like subscription thing. If it wasn't already mentioned, I kind of already mentioned it on this anyways. Yeah, probably just basic screenshot. I would have to assume it would probably be the newest versions of the game, but I'll have to wait and see if it compares to that, I suppose. Alright, looks like it's pretty much the last of it here. Updates and enhancements for current consoles. The players on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X/S can look forward to a smooth 60 frames per second experience. Technically, I believe the current version can already hit 60 frames at least on PlayStation 5. I think it's actually currently the only 60 frame, aside for obviously like a PC version. I believe that came out obviously last year. Finally, whatever. So being console octaphone and got onto PC, of course, last year, which was cool for y'all, I suppose. So yeah, technically there's only two versions, I think, of the game that can hit 60 frames. Albeit technically PS5 is for backwards compatibility. Maybe the PS4 Pro can hit it as well, but base PS4s definitely could not, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, Xbox will finally have a 60 frames per second version, which is the main which yeah, the 60 frames is arguably the main reason that you would want to bring it over to Xbox when they already had like, the multiplayer and backwards compatible version. As the only like current versions that could really do that, like through official means, obviously not through like modding, possibly on PC if it's not possible there. You can previously lock the console, of course. Yeah, 60 frames per second is definitely a pretty nice feel and stuff. I'm not gonna be like that one typical person though that says like everything has to be 60 frames. I don't believe that per se, but it is a nice experience though, where it can be offered. But yeah, enhanced image quality, HDR support, resolutions up to 4K as well, of course. Assume some of those were not console possible, I assume at least on the PlayStation 4 backwards compatible version, whatever for the PlayStation 5. I'm going to assume that wasn't really the case before. So I assume some of that would be new for that version. And also on Nintendo Switch 2, taking full advantage of the new hardware support for DLSS, HDR mouse controls, and the same fluid 60 frames per second gameplay at high resolution. Alright, but yeah. Some of that kind of usual like modern stuff. Yeah, for those that do not know, for some reason Nintendo Switch 2 actually has like mouse controls, kind of like a PC, which is pretty cool. It makes sense given like if you turn the Joy-Cons a certain way, it actually could like look like they could be used as a mouse. Like understand why they actually incorporated that support in the Switch 2. 100%, I kind of do. as I noticed which one, at least. That would be interesting, having like mouse controls on the Switch too, definitely. But I'd have to imagine, obviously, the current PC experience would be better for like mouse controls anyways. Yeah, the same fluid 60 frames per second gameplay at high resolution, yes. And for the last section here, free upgrades on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X. Okay, Xbox Series 0, okay. I wasn't sure if it was like that, but yeah, it's just the same Xbox Series this time. And Switch 2. Yeah, current owners on PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch or the digital backwards compatible version of Xbox One. Yeah, apparently y'all are getting the upgrade for free as well. Apparently, that's cool. That's cool. As long as, again, they're keeping y'all's old version untouched, where y'all can actually play the multiplayer, Xbox 360 and stuff again. Even if they did remove it digitally for some reason, I presume you should be able to get a disc of it. I heard of like a condemned, like, Bloodshots or whatever, like condemned game or something on there got delisted or something. I assume in a case like that you could still get the disc anyways, if for some reason they did that. But it doesn't sound like they're going to be doing that, and hopefully they of course learn from removing the PS4 versions of the trilogy, of course, when they released the Disaster Trilogy Definitive Edition. But yeah, anyone who owns PS4 version can utilize the previous saved data where they left off for the PlayStation 5. Okay, and then they mentioned the Switch 2 players can continue with the previous save data from a previous Nintendo Switch console. They actually don't mention that at all for the Xbox version. So it looks like if you're getting it on Xbox, you will actually have to start over there. It's sounding like, though, actually. To me, it sounded like earlier, they might have mentioned stuff like that earlier. It sounded like it might have been for all the platforms. But again, like I was kind of saying, they are quite different builds, since obviously the 360 backwards compatible version again is the multiplayer, so I'm really not surprised there, obviously. That you would probably have to start over on the new version on Xbox consoles in particular for that new 60 frames version. And then the new console versions are in collaboration with that Double 11 Studios and also Cast Iron Games. I assume they were probably involved with the original, like, porting of the newer versions as well. I could be wrong, but cool. Also will be available in the GTA Plus games library, which I was kind of hinting at earlier. There was another way to get it. That will be upcoming on the exact date. Probably renews on that day, probably for the subscription. Or actually, technically it doesn't. I believe it renews on Tuesday, December 9th, obviously with the next GTA 9 DLC pretty much confirmed indirectly, basically. So it sounds like that might be happening like a week beforehand. So actually for the current benefits for Plus, it should technically be coming out in like that last week for the current benefits. And then PlayStation Plus game catalog apparently as well on December 2nd. So what is that, PlayStation Extra, I want to say, on that? Not Premium per se, but Extra. I think Premium is more for classic games, which this one is kind of more modern. Might consider classic more like PlayStation 2 and before or something. Like Premium subscription on the PlayStation end or something. And then yeah, for more information, apparently you can visit the official site. They have that cylinder kind of icon, which again, I think they use for the weapon wheel, which is kind of cool if you play without like a controller on like iOS and Android. And I'll see the rating and all that kind of stuff. Okay, I think that's pretty much probably going to truly be it though for this video here. Hope you enjoyed.